Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. A big hearty welcome to Shakera Selman, not her first time on the show, and Basil Butcher. Welcome to both of you. Shakera, good to chat with you after a pretty busy couple of weeks in the Super 50.
Yeah, good to be on, Philip. Thanks for having me.
And Basil, I know you were not at the Super 50 in the same way, but I don't think you missed the ball of maybe Super 50 or World Cup cricket, if I know you.
I watched a lot of it. I watched a lot of it. Some, at times was so disappointed with the standard. After a while, I would turn off the game. Yeah. But I looked at a lot of it to get a feel for, the and it served because as it was playing at the same time of the World Cup, I remember saying to myself, "Thank God West Indies not in the World Cup." Because when I saw the quality of playing the World Cup, and then you juxtapose that to what you were watching in the Super 50, you're like, I said, this is great. I will have a stress-free World Cup. I got no heartache, my blood pressure ain't got to go up, nothing. I could watch the World Cup and be stress-free, which was a good thing for my health, so to speak.
That's fair enough. So Shakera, let's start with the World Cup. What were your general impressions of the World Cup? I mean, the Australians winning at the right time, India losing at the worst possible time. But your general feelings of the World Cup, Shakera?
Yeah, I think altogether it was a very good standard. It's disappointing to hear you say you were a bit relieved that West Indies was not there, so you're gonna have to deal with the stress. But about you, Basil. But yeah, it was a very good standard. It was a very good standard. I was impressed with what I saw, especially from the lower ranked teams. I think they did made really good representation of themselves. They were able to upset a few of the big teams as well, which is always good for a competition. It was good to see India play so well, disappointing that they eventually lost when they really needed to win in that final yesterday. But it tends to happen. It happens sometimes. I'm not one who believes in having a bad game or you should lose one, because no one is going to go to intentionally lose a game. I know lots of people said, oh, they need to lose one because they could think. It just went that way. I do not believe in that. I've seen teams win. And we just saw it at Super 50 train. That won all the games they played. They ended up winning the tournament. So teams can do that. They just obviously didn't play their best cricket when it counted most. Credit to Australia, the way they fought back after losing the initial 2 games. But I, for one, I don't know how many people can believe me when I say this, but I remember telling one of my friends before the World Cup even started that I feel India and Australia were going to be in the final. Obviously, I got a lot of questions when Australia lost the first 2 games, and they were asking me if I was still backing Australia. But you can't control the Australians, can you? They know how to win championships. So I was not all too surprised when they won, and they deserved it. They played really well, they fought back well, and they played the best cricket yesterday.
Well, some may say it was only against Afghanistan, but a team that could come back to win that match against Afghanistan when I suppose everybody else other than maybe Cummins and Maxwell, probably everybody else in the world, I figured that Afghanistan would have won that game. A team that could come back from that, you don't count them out.
You don't count them out at all. At all. It was remarkable. That comeback was remarkable, and I think it just pretty much set the tone for the rest of the tournament. I think that inspired belief in the rest of the team, and obviously after that game they became unstoppable.
But yeah, I think that game, had they lost that game, that would have been a very serious position for them to be in, because I think Afghanistan at that stage would have qualified. So Basil,
they would have been in a position for sure.
Yeah, it would have made life very difficult for them.
Yes.
But they got past that.
Yeah, I think that to their psyche, to you the Australians using to quote unquote lowly Afghanistan, despite the fact Afghanistan had beaten a couple other
They're so
big
lowly
teams.
now, but I get the point you're making.
No, yeah, but in terms of world ranking, because
Uh,
the Australians are one of the better teams in the world, and as Shakera said earlier, one of the favorites. Because I think before they started the tournament, those were the two teams, along with England,
uh-huh.
were the three teams, the defending champion Australia, the quote unquote big three,
Uh-huh.
were the favorites to win the tournament. And then two of them started off on a bad footing. England continued, and Australia was able to pick themselves up and just keep motoring. And yeah, and I had forgotten about that game, and I think that game
You
probably
forgot about that game, Basil?
no, I'd forgotten about that game was part of the winning streak
Right.
that
Yeah.
to win the next seven or so games they had to win. I had forgotten about that. That was part of the winning streak, and yeah, I mean they were dead in the boots.
That was
So,
probably the defining moment really for them, because to come back
yeah,
from
yeah.
there.
I mean, when you and that's probably when I started to say, Australia. That's when I started to believe Australia could really win this thing,
Uh-huh.
because when teams in tournaments could pull out a victory, as we would say, from the jaws of defeat in the way they did, they had no business winning that game,
Yeah.
none whatsoever, never. And when you pull out a win like that, you start to believe nobody could beat me. We can win from any situation. That self beliefs, and Shakira is an athlete. Any one of the things about sport, when you really believe that you could win, that goes a long way along with the execution.
Yeah, Shakira, you were part of the 2016 T20 victory, yeah?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
there. Unfortunately, I didn't play because I was injured again. But yeah,
but you were in the squad at the time, I
yeah, I
believe.
was actually vice captain at that point.
Right, and you were there when it all took place. So take us back to that feeling of victory. If you can revisit that, just recapture that for us.
Yeah, I've always struggled to describe it honestly. Prior to that, we had made a few semifinals. We made a final in 2013, 50 over World Cup. But we weren't ever quite able to cross the line. And quite often we lost to Australia. So we met Australia in semifinal, lost to them, met them in the final in 2013 in India, lost to them as well. So to defeat the mighty Australians, we know how the Australians dominate women's cricket. So to defeat them, honestly, like it was unbelievable. And credit must be given to the players that stepped up. Obviously, it was Brittany Cooper in the semi-final after not being able to contribute in the games prior to that. But she stepped up and really helped the team get over the line against New Zealand. I think, yeah, New Zealand in the semi-final. And then in that final, prior to that game, I don't even actually know how many people remember that he had been struggling that tournament. But then she stepped up in that final. And she and Steph really, really set the foundation for us and for the other batters to see us home. And I think it really started with that final over that DeAndre bowl when we were bowling. It swung the momentum back to us. I think the batters fed off of that. And I am speaking about it, probably getting goosebumps now because yeah, it was such a great feeling to win a world championship, but also to win against Australia. It meant so much to us.
If you're still getting goosebumps these many years after, you can imagine the Australians who normally, one could argue, no one would want to say normally cruise through these things. I mean, this is what, they're sick, so it's nothing new to them. But given the struggle this time, the poor start where people were beginning to write them off, given that match where they were on their knees against Afghanistan, given the form of India, I think there'll be goosebumps in that Australian camp for a long time, Basil.
I agree. Yeah, I agree that, and plus you got several of the Australian players that won't be around for the next one. So for a lot of them, this was a last hurrah, because that team, as I on Mason's show, just on giving credit, but on his show several weeks ago, he had Ricardo Elcock on the show, and Mason asked all of them who y'all got to win the World Cup, and at that time Australia had lost the 2 games. And to many people's surprise, Elcock said, I go in with the Australians because that's a team that knows to win. They are
Uh-huh.
battle-tested team veterans.
Yeah.
Because there's a bunch of 30-something-year-old guys in that team. They ain't got. I can't think of anybody. Maybe the wicketkeeper Ingles is probably a 20-something-year-old,
Yeah.
and Zampa might be right on the cusp of 30. But these are a bunch of 30-something-year-old guys who know to win. Several of them were on the last time they won the World Cup in 2015, right?
Uh-huh.
They were on that team, so they, nothing would phase these guys. So you always couldn't count guys like this out, regardless of the situation. Nothing would. They've seen it all. They've been through it all, and those things you can't overlook for a team. Hey, if Elcock went and put something in, because I'm sure the odds went up against Australia, put a little something on that, he probably would be smiling to the bank right now.
Yes. Well, tell us something though. Both of you, think about it. What does this mean though? What as West Indians and West Indies cricket can we take from this whole thing? I mean, you said, and I'm almost tempted to say, who was it? Was it you or Shakera? Somebody said that they were actually glad sometimes that the West Indies wasn't there. Was that you or Shakera? Who was it?
That was me.
That was you, right?
was me.
So given that you said that jokingly,
Yes.
we hope. What really what does this say to us? And I say that given the fact that Netherlands and Sri Lanka had to qualify, through the qualifying tournament. They finished in the bottom two positions. So that does suggest that if you want to say automatic qualifiers, are those who qualified based on performances over a period of time, that was sort of an accurate assessment. And now we are told that the qualification for the Champions Trophy is also wrapped up in that. Afghanistan there and there again, Bangladesh there again, West Indies nowhere wrong. What should this whole thing say to us as West Indies people, cricket people, the administrators, the players themselves, those of us who love the game? What message is there for us?
I'll tell you something. Me and you, we've had the back and forth regarding fitness in the past, right? Yes. And I want to bring that to attention.
Unnecessarily, I might add. But
yes.
One, I'll tell you why when you're finished.
Yes, I'll give you a couple of instances. The 100 made by Class, and he was cramping up, you could see, and he battled his way through. That double century by
Maxwell.
There's several of us in a chat group posited any West Indian batter we have right now could do that. Right?
Well, you added right now, but if you take me back in history, I'll say Gordon Greenwich.
No. We're talking about current. We're not talking about.
Yeah. I know. Go ahead.
Because if you remember, a certain person in your chat posited that, right?
Yes, I remember that.
And he brought up
something like that. Yeah.
Yes, Hetmeyer, and he said, "Hell no." He said maybe he may have the skill, but the fitness, because that's when you hear me and. I was glad to see these things happen, because whenever I push about the fitness, people push back on different reasons, right? And this was a great exhibition. If you have high levels of fitness, even though you're cramping and you're going through all of those things, you're able to overcome and perform. But if your levels of fitness are not elite, you will succumb. And that's where the difference with our players, oftentimes we don't get across the line because we don't have that extra in us in the situation that we could push through. I always remember this guy in his last stint as West Indies coach, Stuart Law. And if you remember, we had some we pushed India in those games. We had some when Shea Hope made 100, right? And we just couldn't cross the line. And he said something at the end of the series, and it pissed me off when he said, the reason why we lost, we ran out of gas. Now, as a coach, I don't mind we lose. We didn't execute. We didn't do this. But it should never be because we didn't have the requisite fitness as a team that to cross the line. And that's something we control solely. That's a controllable. And that's why I always stressing about about we gotta get fit. I know like what you talk about it's skill development. I'm never eliminating, both go hand in hand. But Maxwell is a super fit guy, and still he cramped up. Class is a really fit guy because Class is a guy that wicket keeps and sometimes feels on the outfield. And these guys push you. And they had other players you saw, even Kohli was cramping up. But those guys could push through because, as I was explaining to a friend of mine, in what I do for a living, when we train athletes for stamina, we train them to what we call pain tolerance. Not pain where you got an injury, but pain, that pain where we say like endurance sports that burn, you want to quit. But we train you specifically to be able to push through those things because oftentimes a player might quit because they can't take the something discomforting and they're getting distracted and rather than focusing on the thing at hand.
We got you covered, Basil. Yeah. But Basil, let me tell you something, and I'm going to say something that I don't often do in making, I prefer not to do more often than not. So let me give you a little bit of background, okay? Trained heavily in physical education. A background as a physical education teacher, among other things. All right. Trained in coaching a number of sports. All right. So there's been that exposure both locally and outside the region.
Right on.
I don't know if the word would be invented yet to describe me if I did not think fitness was important.
Oh,
so let's establish that, because some people, when they hear me on this topic, they I don't know if they could only see black or white and they can't see anything in between. But they jump to the conclusion that I'm saying fitness is not important. I would be something worse than a lunatic with the background I described.
Exactly.
To suggest that fitness is not important. You with me so far, guys?
Exactly.
What I'm saying is that if I am as fit as, let's say, first of all, I would like a program one these days with a bundle of fitness people on it, because I don't think that most people who follow, who I find myself in discussion with about cricket, really understand the meaning of the word fitness. And Basil, well, you may understand it. I ain't going there right now because let them go and research it, right? But fitness is a lot more to it than just if a fella belly big or not.
Exactly. Exactly.
But that's a discussion for programming itself.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that if I am as fit as Usain Bolt was at the peak of his career, just to call a name of a top athlete, I may win some medals, at the Olympics. But if I can't bowl or bat to a certain standard, I ain't gonna score runs against nobody. And this is the difference. So what I'm saying to you, so what you should understand by that, Shakera and Basil, is that I'm suggesting that in my opinion, I'm not saying my opinion is gospel or anything. In my opinion, the skill level of generally speaking, there will be exceptions. Generally speaking, of all West Indies cricketers right now, is way below what it needs to be, so that even being super fit will not make a difference to winning competitions. So therefore, fitness to my mind is a given. Obviously, if you're a sportsman, you got to aim at fitness and you got to work on that. But we need to get cricketers who have the skills to execute. The fitness to my mind is a discussion that even need not be had, because it goes, as you said yourself, hand in hand. And not only that, Basil, I'll say one more thing before I pause. If the training methods are as they should be, a lot of that fitness will be incorporated in the actual skill development.
Of course.
I'm not doing a tutorial now on coaching.
No,
if I need to do a program,
you're going the right path. Are you going the right path?
Yeah, if I have to do a tutorial or put up something to give examples of activities that can be done. Remember the background I talk about, I ain't saying to brag. I simply let you know that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
therefore, this thing about fitness, it's taken to. I find that a lot of it comes. This what's the word I want? Where does the only thing some people can see then? Because most of us talk about what we know or what we think we know. And I put it to you that the majority of people who they're shouting about fitness, all right, that's because it is a buzzword and they don't have a clue about skill development. And sadly, that is also at a level beyond the mere spectator. I
Mhm.
say that because the comments I hear, when somebody can tell me, pardon me, Shakera, but when somebody can tell me, especially in relations to women's cricket, that nobody ain't coming through. But yet that person or those persons are people that play cricket at a high level that tell me they don't understand development.
Mhm.
Come true. You mean you can grow like a plant or drop off a tree? You gotta make them come true, you gotta help them come true.
Correct.
Brian Lara and Chanduka and Cody, them sort of people, so don't just turn up every day, you know. Yes, they might have worked hard to
don't drop off the tree.
utilize the skills that or their talent, but they
Yeah.
also, some of them would have been gifted. So therefore, it would not have been, what should I say? They're going to perform at a higher level because they're gifted. And you can't aim and sit or you can't sit around and wait for that. You've got to get the general population to a standard that they can contribute. You get what I'm saying, guys? That's what you got aim at.
Agree.
Occasionally, Brian Lara will drop through or drop on a tree if you feel that's where you come from. Haley Matthews may drop on the tree. But the majority of people, you gotta make them.
Supporting cast, yep.
You gotta make them.
Yep. And if I just quickly say something, because I hear this argument very often that Basil was making about fitness. And while I understand why we may think we do not have guys who are fit, I don't know if I completely agree. You know, I think we may have guys who may have been able to do the same thing and fight through that pain or cramp that we saw with Maxwell, Rizwan, Kohli. Shea Hope is very fit. I think Ali Atkins is very fit. Obviously, he's just beginning his career. And there are a few more guys that we can call. And I completely agree with what Philip said. It has to be that skill acquisition. I think that is a big part of it. I think bigger than that, there are too many cricketers who do not seem to understand the game, understand situations, scenarios, and what is required in that moment. So where we may not see West Indies players, and I remember when I first started making comments back in 2021, I think that's when it was more visible to me, how we fail to rotate the strike. But I do not think that's a lack of fitness. I think we're just thinking the easier way out is to hit sixes. So as opposed to looking to run, we are trying to hit boundaries, not because we're not fit enough to hit boundaries. We just do not understand that's all that's required. We do not necessarily need the boundaries, but we choose to hit them. We choose to try to go after them, and in trying to go after them, then we get into situations where we lose our wicket. So I think, yes, obviously, and I agree, fitness has its place, but so much emphasis, and we saw Cricket West Indies put a lot of emphasis on fitness in the last few years, where guys weren't selected if they didn't meet the standard and everything. I think Evan Lewis was left out. I don't remember who else, but somebody else was left out as well. Exactly. So they placed a lot of emphasis on fitness, but that skill acquisition and the simple understanding of the game. I think that's where
let me add to that though. The mental, I thought you were going there and you went there partially. The mental aspect of it. In other words, if you're mentally strong, okay, that is as important or even more important in playing through pain. Then I don't want to say one is more important than the other, but your
we need all these things to work hand in hand.
Yeah, it has to be. You have to. So Maxwell was not only necessarily fit from going to the gym or whatever he does to get fit, but he has to be a mentally strong person as well. You can't discount that. Of
course.
Well, that's what and the thing about it, that is something that is trainable. As I said to you, we specifically do pain tolerance training and those kinds of things, because the dictum I come from is practice must be harder than the game. I want to push the players, and you see, when people think fitness, they think is how much time a guy or woman spends in the gym. No, I am not talking about gym only, because conditioning, a lot of the conditioning that one would do is not in the gym, right? Because to be truthful, if you get a proper strength program, Tom, but it's just strength training, you shouldn't be in the gym more than half an hour as a cricketer, because cricket is not a strength sport like American football or something. But the conditioning that you would have to do, a lot of it is of what you're going to be doing in practice in your sport. You're spending so much time practicing, That
Basil, I'm not so sure that is done in West Indies cricket. Why do I say that? Again, from that teaching background, as I said, it is part of it, but there are other aspects of that teaching background. And I can tell you that you don't normally set tests, other than you tend to set tests based on what was done. If you understand what I mean, what was taught or what was done. So if you are using this one test to eliminate players from selection, it's telling me that you're testing what you expect. So you've got the same test to eliminate your fast bowlers, your spin bowlers, your wicket keeper, your batsman, your close to the wicket specialist, your boundary specialist. I don't look. I refute any expert anywhere in the world. I don't care how many things he has behind his name. If they can tell me that makes sense.
Yeah, you would have to have different. You have to have different standards for different positions on the field, because as far as I'm concerned, the fast bowler is supposed to be the fittest, if you want to use that term.
But the type of fitness that is required for fast bowler is a different type of fitness for a wicket keeper. It's a different type of fitness for a wicket keeper.
That's what I'm saying.
Down every 2 seconds.
That's why I'm putting it in quotation marks.
You know,
right? The fast bowler, because on the cricket field, the kind of impact the body has to go through in the skill is more than any other position on the field.
And different too. And different.
Right? So in quotation marks, I'm saying fitness, because as you correctly stated, fitness can be a lot of things, because
it's a word that I think you should have to get
because look,
I feel you have to get some sort of license to use the word, because people use it, people abuse it.
Right. Because fitness is just, in a nutshell, simply means the environment that you are expected to perform in, you have the requisite physiological, mental capacity
yes.
So to meet the demands in that environment. That's what fitness is.
Little bit to spare.
Yeah, because a guy running a 100-meter race and running Usain Bolt may not have the requisite fitness to compete in a cricket match or a basketball game or what have you.
Right.
You see, because the demands on his body is not running a sprint is not like what's going to be put on his body in a basketball game or a soccer match or a cricket game, right? So that's why
this is why cricket activities need to be central to the whole idea of fitness. Not that you can't do other things, but you know, but I think Shakera wanted to say something, or did say something.
No, I just going to agree with you. This is why trainers and coaches, the communication between trainers and coaches has to be a lot better. I'm not sure if it's the same in other countries, but definitely it has to improve in West Indies cricket, because I completely agree with you. Too often we think fitness is how many laps a guy can run or how long they spend in the gym, but it has to be correlated, because at the end of the day, it's a cricketer. So you're trying to get them cricket fit. You're trying to get the best of them, get them capable of producing results consistently, good results consistently in games. So I agree with you. We use the word fitness too loosely. Everybody thinks it's just running aimlessly or it's just gym. It has to do something with skills. It has to be related to skills.
That's why, for example, you know, using Cricket Australia as an example, they use the term cricket athlete, right? And that's not an accident why they say why you use the term cricket athlete, because this is an athlete that competes in cricket. So therefore, this athlete has to train to be able to compete in that environment and meet all the demands physiologically and mentally in that environment. So as a trainer, that has to be your focus, to get that person ready to be able to do those things in that environment successfully consistently over a period of time. And one of the things we say from a strength and conditioning perspective, the more we want guys or the women to be spending most of the time on the field of play, not in the gym. My job is to make sure they don't spend time on the physio chair or whatever, because the only way you get better is practicing and playing, not in the gym, right? And I mean, for example, when I would look on social media and I see West Indian cricketers, you know, to show their work, you know, and I watch some of the things that they're doing, and I just hold my head like, My Lord, who train you guys? Who are y'all trainers? What are this BS y'all doing?
And then you wonder why they can't pass the test. But I'll tell you something though, before we get more in depth into the Super 50, although in a sense we are dealing Super 50 since since we related all this to West Indies cricket. But this whole thing that Shakera alluded to, and maybe you did too, about teams being selected and so on, and other teams being let's say fitness used as a selection criteria. We're seeing now in another aspect of life, which I'm not going to get into now at all, how we sometimes copy things from other countries without looking deep enough. So that sometimes we copy things that others do, all right? And there are two problems there that I will highlight. There might be a zillion, but I can only highlight two. One, we don't often check to see when they realize the folly sometimes of what they're doing and change it. In some cases, but I should say folly, because folly would suggest that they should have known from the beginning. But sometimes they don't know that something isn't going to work till you try it. Yeah. So I would say we don't check to see the outcome sometimes, but we jump and do it because somebody else did it. And the other thing is that we don't look to see how that particular thing applies to our situation. Let me give an example from another sport, which may even bring it home more. Anybody here familiar with table tennis?
Yeah, I am.
Which country in the world would you quickly identify as being outstanding at table tennis? There are many, but which one comes to mind? China. Shakera, you agree? Good.
China. Yep.
So China, and I can tell you this, I'm not listening. China can bring together. China's biggest problem is deciding who to leave out.
Yeah.
So that China some years ago, I haven't checked the names to see if they still do it, would go to the World Championship and win. And their top player would be the champion. 2 years later, you're not there. Not necessarily because he isn't any good anymore. There's so many players. Their biggest problem is to decide who to leave out. So if a fella turns up 30 seconds late for practice, they could eliminate him from playing table tennis ever again in his life, and they will still be number one.
And so that's actually funny.
So if I'm at the table tennis center coaching, and the guy comes into to practice session, told me, well, he late because he had the detention. Or he late, and I know he late because he saw a little young lady in the bus stand that diverted his attention. Would it be sensible to treat him in the same way that he would be treated in China? Because if I do, I give you a chance to answer the question. I hope the answer is obvious. Because if I do, in about 3 weeks or so, I have no players.
I agree.
Does that mean that I don't have a standard of discipline? No, it doesn't mean that. It means I have to be practical about my reality. And my reality is that the first thing I got to do is make the table tennis so interesting that he don't even want to check the girl that he see down the road. Because he want to get to table tennis practice. He will talk to her after.
I get
you get where I'm coming from, guys?
Yeah, I get
to look at the reality of your situation. So we have punished Hetmar, okay, because he hasn't been fit. I don't know the full details, and there may be things I don't know. So forgive me if I too far off. But we have punished Hetmar for lack of fitness. Have we benefited from it in any way?
What I would say, on one hand, I understand where the West Indies cricket coming from, because they look, and I'm going to say this and then say maybe they could have done things differently.
Maybe
cricket is coming from a perspective. We have slid as a cricketing nation. Our players' performances have slid so far down as a team. We're not able to compete with the best teams consistently, right? And so now you're talking about how do we rebuild to be a really competing nation. Well, you look at all the markers: fitness, skill development, etc., etc. Well, they decided, okay, well, we got to get our guys, we got to get fitness standards because our competing nation standards are XYZ. So we got to start these tests, and guys got to, to make the standards, etc., etc. However, what I felt, I agree with having the standards, but what I felt could have been done is you filtered this all the way down to the under 11s, the under 13s, under 15s. for them to understand. Because if you go to Australia or elsewhere, or any of these top nations, you will hear the little 13-year-old talking about how much training he got to do or she got to do to play the cricket. So they are inculcated in them from there.
Like the Chinese and the table tennis youngsters.
Yes, in there. Because look, when I was coming up as a youngster play cricket, we all know we had to go and run the miles to be fit to play. That was something. Nobody had to tell us that. That was something inculcated because we watched the people that were older than us. They were doing that. But for some reason, all of those things dropped out of our cricket because I asked friends of mine who are coaches in the region, like mostly in Guyana, and I asked him, do them guys run like when we were young? He said, no. The question would be, why? What happened? Why all of these things about, and even think about
what may have happened, Basil, is that you have a different mentality, and any teacher dealing with the youngsters can tell you that. So therefore, if you want them to do certain things, you may have to go about getting them to do it differently.
Oh yes, I agree. I agree 100% because I've had that experience. I have a brother who has been a teacher for over 30 years here in the United States, and I remember because I coached a lot of youngsters on the 19s, on the 50s, and I got a lot of cues about how to deal with young people from my brother because I can't go at them like when I was young because our generation, like put it in a nutshell, when an adult told us to jump, we asked how high. But you ask a youngster today, they will ask you, why should I jump?
Or you may say, big man, you really serious? You really want me to jump?
Not today. I ain't doing that today. Sorry, catch me next week.
Right. So if you do not have a proper explanation that they can rationalize that is worthy, they're not jumping at all. Right? And you can't jump and say from our old school.
So what you're saying, Basil, is that we need to adapt our training methods and all that we do to target it to who we're dealing with and stop just simply saying we're doing this because South Africa do it or Australia do it.
Of course, I agree. Okay. There must be analysis. You must look at your environment and see how you could implement those principles into your environment that's going to benefit your environment in the long run.
Fair enough, but I want to get some input here on the Super 50 from our resident expert. And Shakera, first of all, let's deal with you. How did the commentary go? The commentary experience?
I enjoyed it. I think I continue to learn. And yeah, I'm grateful for every opportunity I get to comment on and give analysis on any competition, actually. So I enjoyed it. Yeah, let's deal with me first. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So now let's get to the cricket. Or anything you want to share where the Super 50 is concerned. We know Trinidad, Trinidad did something like India, but won better. They dominated, but they knew how to win.
Yeah. Boy. Basil already started off the show by saying he was very disappointed with the standard. And I remember when was it before? I think it was before he came back, or I think it was right after I came back from our women's regional tournament. And I think I do not remember which show it was on, but I remember someone stating that the standard at the women's regional was very poor, which I agree. I completely agree. It was a very below par standard, especially when women's cricket is improving.
Which is not surprising given that nobody thinks it's important to teach girls the skills. But go ahead.
That is true.
We're waiting for the women's cricket a treat to produce.
I don't know where they can get that again, but yeah.
But go ahead. What's that?
I said that tree hasn't even been planted.
Oh, okay. Yes, you were saying Shakera.
But yeah, I agree with Basil when he started off by saying that the standard of the men's Super 50 was very disappointing, especially when you could compare it with where the international game is, because World Cup was showing at the same time. It was very disappointing. Well, there were 2 or 3 scores over 300. One may argue that the pitches did not support very high scores, which is another Another thing we obviously have to discuss another time. That has long been accompanying the standard of pitches in the Caribbean. But yeah, it was disappointing to see, especially when I think many people would have expected the tournament to be of a higher standard because the West Indies players were available.
Yes.
So you felt as though it was going to be good cricket. You would see high scores, you would see good skills on show because most of the West Indies players who play in that international squad were available. How many players missed out? Pooran came for the last 3 or 4 games.
Jason Hood was probably the biggest
right.
Jason Hood from Jamaica.
And Brandon King. Yeah. But other than that, you had all of your West Indies players playing. And it was very disappointing to see. And I am not going to completely agree with Basil that I was relieved that West Indies was not competing.
I think that was a World Cup.
Yeah, it was a draw. It was a draw. Yeah. So I'm not going to make that joke, but
in other words, you're not going to suggest that they probably would be better off not playing the competition.
No. That's not the sentiment.
No, I say she's not going to say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was really disappointing to see, and it was a true reflection of where we are in the Caribbean, where our standard of cricket is, and how far behind the rest of the world we are. And
so if I want to be tongue in cheek, I can say, so even the fit guys struggle.
Even the fit guys struggle.
Because they did not display the level of skill that you would want to see.
To you.
Exactly.
Talk to anybody who feels that we can run fellas around the Garrison Savannah and they can start beating people. Of course, I'm only using that analogy of the Garrison Savannah loosely, but you get the point I'm making. We got to teach you, we got to raise the standard of our cricket, of the skills, the bottom ball skills. Then we got to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we don't have to do the fitness, but without the skills.
I mean, if you are looking to raise the standard of the bottom ball skills, the standards will have to be raised. That will come. That will be part of it because your skills and so will never go along without that. So.
But I'll tell you this much, though. I'll tell you this much, and I don't mean to refute that or even to revisit that. But I'll tell you that. You give me a fit guy or give me a highly skilled guy, I'll take the highly skilled guy any day.
Well, I will never pick a guy. I will never pick a player just because he is super fit. Just to tell you that. Never would pick a player.
So y'all agree?
Not really.
And the question I would always say to anybody is no player. I do not think any player has ever been selected by the West Indies because they're fit, based on just their fitness. I have heard rumblings, and I've tried my best to investigate this in the way in which, for the West Indies men players, this fitness testing has not been an egalitarian, done with equity, I should say. That certain players were getting by without doing testing, but we, the public, were never told that. They were always showing us in the team, but they were not being tested. But the players would know these things. And I was told this by a player who was an active regional player at the time, who was active in Weeper. He was one of the reps. He told me this, right? And I told him, I said, look, me, I'm gonna argue with you. But I tried my best because it was some Trinidadian players he was talking about. And I tried my best to, with my little one contact in Trinidad to try to get to the bottom of this. I'm unable to get to it, but where there is smoke, there is fire, right? And that person would not have said those things just widely, because that same individual was the one that told me. I went home to Guyana last year and he said to me, he said, Basil, the fitness testing get harder. It got harder to make the standards than just the yo-yo test in the past, right? And then he explained to me the whole thing. And then I confirmed that with somebody who was on the medical committee I met last year in Florida when West Indies was here. And I asked him, and I said, look, a player told me, if you, because now apparently what he said, now they having what you call, so now the big belly man getting eliminated. Body fat and the yo-yo, the two of them, those are the two main ones. And then you got the others like Shakera could tell you, the run in the trees, the strength and power and so on. But those two counting for the most. So if you fail one or the two of those, your chances of, because the medical community person said to me, you have to be a real super athlete in doing the other tests.
Are they going to be taking runs and vacates into consideration at all?
Good question.
No, we just talking about fitness standards. We're not talking about the performance.
Yeah, but if you eliminate a guy based on if you were saying that you're going to eliminate a guy based on body fat, or the other example you give, he's eliminated before you even check the scorebook to see what he's done.
The science clearly shows the leaner one is, the chances of higher performance is there.
Yeah, but if I'm performing, if I'm averaging more than everybody else.
Yeah, but this is what I'm going to
say. And I'm left out because of my body fat.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm saying.
Are the other guys going to improve their average because their body fat is less than mine?
The science says that. However, I do not think it is reason why you should eliminate a player, right? Because their body fat is above a certain percentage, but their production.
That's all the medical people trying to make themselves relevant.
No, I mean when you look at all, it is without thing. The leaner an athlete is, the chances of their performance is way better than if they're not. But I don't think
more, and what is also true, another truth, and Philip Hackett didn't make up this, that the more runs a guy scores and the more wickets he takes, the greater chance of helping his team.
I agree. You should not eliminate a player because of their body fat percentage. If their performance is that are better than their colleagues. I don't agree with that at all.
But there's one more thing I would say before I asked Shakera to go back to Shakera, and I'm going back to Shakera for a particular reason, because she talked about not being satisfied with the standards. So I want to get her to maybe tell us some stuff that can happen. But to type what you were saying there, or to put some further thing go deeper into that, you talked about the various strategies and so on, and the body fat and all that. The other thing that I found very useful in my own life and the life of many people is outcomes. So if I decide, if my yard is flooding and I adopt a particular strategy to stop it from flooding, but it continues to flood, that should tell me that I need to adopt a different strategy, that strategy not working. If my roof is leaking and I patch it with something and it still leaks, that may tell me I need to, or it tells me for sure I need to do something else. I may even need to change the roof. It might be somebody may need to get rid of the house. The point is outcomes. We have been at this nonsense now for years, and our cricket is getting worse and worse, and we still feel that is the solution.
Well, it can't be the solution. It has to be part of.
So I ain't even getting into who know about fitness and who qualifies. I'm simply saying that we've been on this pathway now for a long time, and far from stabilizing, we are actually getting worse. We went out to the T20 World Cup last year before the real action started. We were completely out of this one, and 2 years to go, and we out to the Champions Trophy already. and we still feel that that strategy is the solution.
No.
Let's see if we can get some solutions
So-
from you, Shakera, in terms of how we're
I
going to
think,
get
I
this.
think though, what we have to, well, we Basil just alluded to the whole West Indies fitness test goal, and one thing that must be said is that the athletes are given another chance. So it's more than one chance to reach that minimum standard. And I think I am hoping that we can all agree that elite athletes should be of a certain standard.
We agreed about that. We agreed on that at the start of the show.
Very high.
In my opening comments, I agreed on that. But I also said that to be considered elite,
and
to be
Shakera,
considered elite, you must have a skill level to be considered elite.
Agreed,
and
agreed.
Shakera,
But then yes, Basil.
you would agree the standards at West Indies fitness standards are lower than all the other countries.
They're not very high. They're
Exactly.
Not very high when you compare. And the reason that.
But Shakera, would you also agree that our skill standard is way below the others?
Oh yes, everything is low.
Of course, and we have a few guys who are exceptional, who are very talented, and we've been talking about Hetmeyer for a very long time. But I think what they want to see is the commitment by someone like Hetmeyer, and I understand all you said, Basil, that there may be other stuff affecting him besides simply not being able to pass the fitness test. But they want to see the commitment by Hetmeyer to reach that minimum standard. I think
your commitment is two way, though. You know, commitment is two way.
Agreed. Yeah, okay. And I may not know all the intricate details.
And neither do I, but I do know that commitment is two way.
Of course,
it's very difficult to be committed to something if that, let's say to someone, because it's something, it might be difficult for me to make the statement I'm going to make. It's very difficult to be committed to someone who's not committed to you. That's going to be a problem.
Of course.
That's true. We can never argue that. We can never argue that. Yeah. But yeah, and I didn't actually get to make the point I wanted to make earlier when we were speaking about taking parts of what other teams are doing, because I agree with y'all. I've seen trainers watch other teams train and pick parts of it and implement it in the West Indies side without understanding the reasons that these teams are doing it or the times that these teams do it. So while lots of these teams do certain stuff out of season, we are now doing it with our athletes whilst we are playing a 5-match series, and then wonder why athletes are breaking down. And we are thinking, oh, well, the other athletes are doing it, but we have not understood that they're doing it out of season and months in advance of a hectic season. But we are just seeing it and saying, oh, well, our athletes should be able to run this amount as well. So can we do this in the middle of a season? So of course, and then there's no communication, and the athletes are expected to come straight from doing that session and bowling 9 overs without being able to pull out. Of course, that athlete will break down. Of course, we will have issues with people being injured. So it has a lot to do with communication and understanding, and I agree with everything you guys have said. You can't just pick out certain parts.
I'm gonna tell you something, Shakera. On that note, I have served several times as the physio for the U.S. team, national men's team, and I remember we went to the T20 World Cup qualifiers in 2013 in UAE, and we were playing against Namibia, and I watched the Namibia team warm up before the game. I laughed to myself. If I gave my team half of that, we couldn't play the match. I knew my team. I knew the levels of conditioning, and I had to tailor the pre-match preparation that for their level of fitness, because I can't push them hard in there and expect them to go out there and play. And that's where, as a trainer, you gotta understand. You have to understand. You can't. Oh, this nice shiny thing you looking at. Oh, I look pretty, but I was watching. Because our guys had already finished warming up, and I'm sitting there watching the Namibia team. I was like, my Lord,
no, sorry, I don't. It's not that I want to interrupt you, but I don't want to lose this thought, because you would just hit a nail on the head that I think anybody who understands what you were saying could not be listening. I just want to add a little bit to it. You said that these guys are doing something and you couldn't do that for your team, etc. But think beyond Namibia and US, right?
Mhm.
Now, those guys were able to do that. Let me be ridiculous. If you, from 2, 3 years old, feed your children corn curls and juicy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
Mhm.
are they as ready? Are their bodies as ready at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 to do the things that need to be done for an elite athlete as another culture where the nutrition, especially for those identified as athletes, is better? I remember training some years ago outside of the Caribbean, where it was pointed out how you're looking at preparation of an athlete. So let's say, for example, you're looking at an Olympic sprinter and you do your research and you recognize, well, look, the average age of, let's say, maybe an Olympic gold medalist, let's say it's 28. I'm not saying it's that, but let's say that, right? You're looking at people 12, 13, 14 who are into the sport and who are running. You're preparing them for the 2 or 3 Olympics down the road, you know?
Exactly. No,
Right?
because
So therefore, they're doing the right
yes,
thing. And that
no,
preparation is not only technical, you know, that is
no,
health from the
Philip,
top of the head down to the toes.
Philip,
Oh,
high performance. And
yeah.
this term often is used loosely in the Caribbean, particularly.
Yes.
High performance environment starts from on the 11, on the 13. Because there's several models out there that you can choose from. Athlete development models, where you have the skill coaches, the strength coaches, the nutrition, the mental, all the aspects that go into developing an elite athlete. So your structure would have all of those elements starting from the ground all the way up. So we don't have that in the West Indies at all, right? We all understand that is one of the, when I talk about fitness, I'm not talking it isolated. You have to, just to give a visual. The athlete is in the middle. You got strength, you got stamina, you got speed, you got skill, you got the style, you got the nutrition, you got the mental, and all of those things. No, when you look at your athlete, the athlete could be really great in the fitness, but they're lacking in the skill. So you're focusing on be with this athlete wholly and solely on fitness. You gotta looking at the areas where they're devoid and to strengthen that so they become, and that is the basis all over the world, regardless of sport.
And I'll go further, Basil, that sometimes the life of most athletes in most sports is short. And sometimes, Basil, what has happened before outside of your control is such that you will never get that athlete to the required level of fitness. But that athlete may very well be skillful enough, maybe, possibly, that it can be of use to you. So when you start eliminating people based on the yo-yo test, and you've got a small population playing a sport, which is what we have in the Caribbean, you're wasting time. You're killing the sport. You have to be aware of the realities of the people who come to you, who in our culture, we have no control over. Before a guy would come to the serious attention of cricket West Indies, let's say, maybe, I wouldn't even say with an under 15 tournament. I don't think a guy who scores a lot in under 15 that West Indies selector is going to be looking to do a whole lot with him. Okay. Maybe at under 19. And even then, look how long it took some more under 19 players to get a look in the West Indies or even the national team. So you're talking about people who are going to come to the attention of the international, the coaches who are looking after the international setup or even the national setup at about 18, 19 years old. And you would have had no input in that guy's nutrition or anything to do with him before that. But you want to get him up to the standard of an Indian or Australian who's been in a system from 6 years old. Exactly. That must be one of the definitions of madness.
Yeah, I got a question for Shakera because you have been in, and I want to put you on the spot to tell tales, if you will, because you have been in the West Indies setup recently, whether it's male or female, it's similar things that done, and I would because when you, for example, do you get, as a player, your fitness program, is that individualized to the point that it takes into consideration your injury history, etc., right? And all these things, because why I'm saying this, and you're laughing,
and also cover my head. I also
yeah,
cover my head, which gives you an answer.
yes, I know.
Please
I
got your
know.
answer, Basil. Don't put any more pressure.
No, I'm not gonna, because you know why? When Shamar Holder went off to England and they had these videos showing the raw thing, and they showed the one video I remember with the strength and conditioning coach, and then after he was discussing with Shamar's coach about the different areas he's weak in and blah blah blah. And I remember in a chat group, some of my friends, and I said to them, gentlemen, don't get all carried away. That guy, any conditioning coach here in the United States, I myself, when I assess a player or any client, is even more comprehensive than what that guy did. Because I come up in a structure where my initial mentor used to say, you must not guess, you must assess. So how am I gonna just throw a program at you because it's a quote unquote fitness program? And why I ask you this, Shakera, I'm going back now 20 years, or even a little more than that. There was a player who played for the West Indies. We still have a close relationship to this day. Every time he got a program, he would send it to me. And I would look at it. Sometimes I used to be away. You're strength coach trying to make you a bodybuilder? This was nonsense. Right? And when he would come to New York, he would come at the gym where I used to work out of, and I would give him a program based on what he needed. We would go through an assessment, and I would give him a program that looked nothing like what the West Indies strength and conditioning coach. And I won't call name, but I'm going to just say that conditioning coach is still in the West Indies setup.
Well, then obviously, well, thankfully you don't mean Dennis Witt, because I think we would take away your traveling document.
Yes.
If you were to bad talk Dennis Witt. But
no. And in Dennis Witt's defense, I'm not. I mean, Dennis came in another time. But what Dennis did, we saw the results, because all of those players would tell, Clive Lloyd would tell you he added 5 years to his career, right? And Michael Holden and all of the different guys. And one of the things you could look when Dennis Witt was there, you didn't have a lot of guys used to be out injured for prolonged periods, right? And it wasn't as sophisticated. Like today, we got all this sports medicine and the whole 9 yards. Yet still,
it goes back to the awareness of who you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, Shakera, your teammate is an example. Taylor. Taylor's been carrying a back problem now for over 2 years. That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask you to comment on that, Shakera. If you want to see you.
No. Yeah, I'm just making the comment.
Yeah, she has been carrying an injury for a while.
Yeah, but listen though, before you get us all in trouble, Basil, Shakera, back to this over 50 as we wind down.
Yeah.
There's no quick fix for anything. We know this. But if it were possible that you could make some suggestions, let's say, and you were asked for three things that you would like to see done that could impact on an improved Super 50 for the next edition. 3 things. I mean, I'm not saying that those 3 things will be the answer to all problems. So I don't think I'm asking for 3 magic pills. Okay? Just 3 things that will work towards, in your estimation. And I say 3 things, I leave it open. You know, in whatever aspect of the cricket you want to look at. 3 things. And Basil, I'm going to ask you a similar question before we close.
I think the most obvious one is improved standard of pitches. Until we get our pitches right, we are not going to improve the standard of cricket we play. And we've heard Ashwin come over to the Caribbean and speak about the standard of pitches. We saw it when West Indies played against India, especially in that Test series. We have to improve the standard of pitches. We saw, if you look at the numbers from Super 50, spinners dominated for more than one reason. Not just because our batters have a clear deficiency against slow bowling. And note I say slow bowling because
Yes,
we see a lot of we see a lot of part-time spinners, guys who aren't necessarily spinning the ball, still being able to get wickets and out our better batters. Yeah, slow bowlers. So we have to get better pitches. And I think that comes down to education, educating our groundsmen. I'm not convinced that our groundsmen around the Caribbean are educated to the point that they need to be, that they understand how to get better pitches.
Okay.
So that's the most obvious one for me. Funny that we never, I guess maybe we didn't speak a lot about the details of the Super 50 because we saw they just introduced.
Feel free to do so now.
Right. So we saw they just introduced the point system.
I have a question for you for that. Yes.
About the points. Okay. Yes. You want to ask now?
No, I wanted to hear your views because someone that works with CWI, I know, explained to me this whole the trust behind the point system, and I understood. I had an understanding about it. So I want to hear what your views is, and then I'll give you mine.
Yeah, and I understand the reasoning behind this point system, and I agree with utilizing it. I think my two main issues as it related to the point system, though. Firstly, they were introduced too late. Well, the system was introduced too late, and we heard even, I think it was Rob McCall in that last game that Jamaica played. We heard him allude to the fact that they did not have sufficient time to practice for that system, with that bonus system in mind. So it obviously was introduced too late. And I think there were way too many points. I do not agree with a team being able to get more points than they would if they lost the game. So a team will lose the game and get more points than the winner. I don't agree with that. Obviously, there must be something for winning. Ultimately, you want to win. So I think those were the two things, but I understand why, because we spoke heavily about wanting to improve the standard of cricket that we play in the Caribbean. And something as simple as points for scoring over 300. We only had 2 teams scoring over 300. So we need to get there, because if we continue to score to 20 and to 50, we might not be at the next World Cup.
What if somebody suggested to you that you didn't get teams scoring over 300 because the quality of the bowling was that good? How would you respond to that?
That's my response there.
Okay. All right. But listen though, Shakera.
We know different.
But Shakera, in terms of what you said about the pitches though, my concern there is that someone hearing you say that, and I can say this with assurance because I've actually heard it before, will say that Ashwin, you're talking about Ashwin, the Indian off spinner, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mentioned one player. I spoke. Well, I said I mentioned one player, but I also spoke to West Indians. And
no. I'm not disputing what you're saying. I'm just showing you why we sometimes go around in circles. Because somebody will say that look at the pitches that India produce. Because we like to look at other people. But India is one of the world powerhouses. If they choose to do a particular thing strategically that might be dodgy or whatever, that is them. That's their call. We are not there. So sometimes, I've heard this before. Somebody made a comment in one of those chats, Basil, along that line. Somehow, in our culture in this part of the world, when we are criticized, we always get defensive, and try to shoot the messenger.
Correct.
Rather than look inwardly and say, well, look, this person probably didn't even mean well. This person probably even wanted to embarrass me. So I'm not going to go there with them, and I'm not going to think, but I should still look within myself and see how much of it is true. And, sometimes we need to get to that point. You were finished, Shakera, or you wanted to go to Basil for his contribution?
Well, Basil wanted to respond. He wanted to say something after I spoke about this point system. So
just like you, Shakera, I understand what they were trying to do, right? And speaking to people, I won't call names, but speaking to people, just like what you said, Robman Powell said out loud, that was corroborated to me by another team that yeah, they only got the points thing a few weeks before the tournament. No, and I agree with you. You can't lose a game and get more
I get more
points
points
from
than
the system than winning a game. So that gotta change. That
just
has to
doesn't.
change. The incentive is to win the match, right? You got the highest reward has to be for winning the match,
Yep.
right?
You want me to give you? You want me to give you? You want me to give you
Then
guys an academic comparison?
yeah, because
Yeah.
then
So
why
let's
do
say you've got an examination, a math exam, okay, where you get marks for getting the answer correct, but you also get marks for showing you're working. From what Shakera is saying, you could show you're working, and at every stage, it makes sense. But for some reason, it may be a mishap or something. You put down the wrong answer. That means that you could actually end up with more marks than a guy who didn't show the working but put down the right answer.
correct?
And that clearly doesn't make sense. Because the guy may have gotten the right answer without showing the working because he's so brilliant that the answer was obvious to him.
Yep.
So you can't penalize the guy for being brilliant. You know,
Right.
so
The
hopefully that
other
will help
part-
people to see the folly of the point system, that aspect of it.
And just to add to that, before Basil continues, I had conversations with teams who still during the tournament did not understand the point system. They still did not know how many runs or how many wickets they needed to only have. So it was one wicket in the power play.
Right. One.
Teams were still convinced midway in the tournament that if they lost 2 wickets, they were still getting the bonus point midway in the tournament. So again, that's because it was.
This is something that should be implemented, guys, at training level.
Yes, that is the reason why.
And I'll tell you what, Basil, if that's implemented and that becomes a part of the training, assuming that the authorities think that is something that needs to be pursued, if that is done at the training level in the way that you would pursue something that you believe in, you wouldn't even need a point system. You will see the evidence of it in the cricket.
Well,
even without a point system.
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, one of the things I felt, the point system now, following this tournament, I see it as an assessment tool for players collectively as a team.
Having not taught the curriculum.
And individually. So now, when you return back to your respective territories, you now know, look, we don't rotate the strike. This has to be part of our thing. A batter who don't have those skills to now as an individual, you have to work on X, Y, Z. So it could be it could be useful in that. And what's interesting, we talk about India. In this World Cup, the leading wicket takers were all fast bowlers. Minus Adam Zampa. When you go through the list of all the people that took the most wickets, it were fast bowlers in the quote unquote India, the spinning place in the world. It tells you that the pitches for the most part were good pitches.
Yep.
That reminds me of the Barbados team. Actually, I'm going to Trinidad.
Oh, before you say that, Phil, take a pin, Phil, because I want to comment on the Barbados team. I watched the game when they played Guyana, and when Guyana made 202, I turn and I tell me friends in chat, you Barbados ain't making the runs. And I said, what? I said, no. I watched the game. I see Rossin Chase bowl a ball. The ball bounced and turned and nearly take off head. So I said, with all the spinners Guyana got, and a lot of Bajan guys don't play spin as well. How they gonna make the runs? And so said, so done. I predicted what will happen before they even bat. And 202 in 50 overs, you should say, well, this can be a cakewalk. But a wicket where Chase looked like he was Lance Gibbs. Because
Basil, are you saying, Basil, that the Barbadian batsman didn't display the skill level to come to the spin ball?
Of course.
That word again.
And here, the Bajans might want to let me to the country if I continue.
No, but that word again, the skill level.
That's where it was. But even with all the West Indian batters, he still had no confidence in Barbados team.
Who's this?
No. Here, it's 2 players on your team On your team, I expected to do to
It's getting
that could
personal
have
now,
done.
Shakera.
Shea Hope and Chase. They were the two guys I thought if Barbados was to win that game, the two of them had to get scores. Because they're the two better players of spin on the Barbados team. And it's the two, though it would have been heavily on their shoulders to get the 202, which unfortunately the two of them didn't. I mean, Chase did a half decent job. I think if I remember, Hope get a beauty. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's probably the only ball I saw.
Yes, he got a beauty, and you just gotta tip your cap to the bowler. He get a beauty, right? He didn't throw his wicket, right? But I mean, I would have said the same for any other team. On that wicket there, my lord! I mean, they were making guys who barely turned the ball. I mean, Sinclair hardly spins the ball, and he had the ball turning right turn.
So Basil, so we accept that fitness and skill, some work needs to be done there, and we looked. I hope that we've given our viewers the insight that there's a lot more to that than just the words and how they're spelled. Okay, so
yeah.
Shakera shared some stuff, and she brought up the issue of pitches and points. That's worth 3 points. I lost the 3 points.
And I don't think I'm crucifying the groundsman, because obviously we had 500s in that tournament.
I didn't count. I didn't make a final count.
I think about
we had some hundred. We had some batsmen scoring.
Justin Graves.
Yeah.
Shane Dulrich.
But we had some hundreds. Yeah.
Roughly 5. So it means that
it was possible.
The pitches weren't all bad.
No. If your skill level was adequate, it was possible.
Exactly.
The field, the UWI field was the egregious field in the tournament.
Yes.
And I agreed. I heard Basil on the Mason program complaining about the grass wasn't low enough. And then when I watched the game, I said, "Oh, that's what you mean. Guys drive the ball that should be 4 runs, but the ball starts slowing up before it gets to the boundary." And if we're going to be playing a tournament where the level is below the one level below international, we got to do better than that.
Okay, so guys, sorry?
There was a game that started late because the groundsman wasn't there or something. Was that the same, a Barbados game?
Yes, it would be again. It would be at UWI, yes.
So all of that needs to be fixed if you're playing a tournament.
But then the PR needs to be fixed too, because I think I heard, I wasn't aware of it at the time. I probably wasn't tuned at the time, but I got the impression that the reason was given that it was something to do with weather. So
okay, I was okay. Let's just say okay.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm dealing with secondhand information here because I wasn't tuned into that game from the start. But if that is so, then it means
I don't know. I heard her saying that the rain never fell. So
no, Shakera, don't misunderstand me. I'm not refuting what you you were there. Okay, so I'm saying that maybe another point we can look at is the fact that we are in a very small world nowadays. That may seem like a strange thing. What do we mean by that? The world is physically smaller. It means that almost every day I meet somebody else.
Faster.
Yeah, almost every day I meet somebody who I may have known 20 years and then realize that they're related to somebody who lives 2 houses from me, etc., etc., etc. The world is extremely small, okay? Because of technology, mainly. So if you want to have respect, or you want people to accept you in good faith, sometimes you just need to be straight up with apologies. Acknowledging that any of us can make mistakes. And the important thing is not to make the same mistakes over and over and over. So if the groundsman wasn't there, and that's the reason for the late start, there are 100 ways that can be communicated without saying that the rain or anything else had and without even saying that the groundsman was late. You know? So that's where PR can come into it. But then to do that, you must have the people in the PR positions who understand how to do those things. So Basil, your wrap up. What would you like to see apart from the 2 issues that Shakera quite wisely shared?
There were 7 centuries scored. I just looked at it.
7?
7, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you only had 2 guys score over 400 runs.
Yeah, Bravo and Justin Graves.
Bravo. Braves and Bravo. So,
Yep.
So how are we gonna get these guys to score some more runs next time?
one of the things,
And if you say fitness, I'll mute your mic.
that's one. But I think the one of the biggest problems in West Indies cricket, as far as I'm concerned, is the lack of standard, the standard of the cricket, the competitive standard. Because when you have a highly competitive standard, it forces players to do the things necessary for them to survive in that environment and to move up the ranks. Because otherwise you'll just fall by the wayside. That was what we had when we were talking about the glory days of West Indies cricket. People would tell you about how intense playing club cricket was. It wasn't you can just turn up and no, you had to come every time to a club match ready to play, because there were other guys, because the club cricket is from where you're going to get called to play for the country, etc., etc. And the competition of everybody trying to get called to trials and so on, their performances were determined by how well they played at the lower levels. We don't have that intense competition in our cricket. And how we repair it, in my opinion, we have to have a high perform. And I mean high performance, not what these people say high perform. We have to have a high performance structure from the ground up. I mean, I listened to the Australian guy who's a coach and manager, said we start our youngsters at 6, right? And by the time they get to 11, we start filtering in all those elements of what a high performance athlete would be. They start here. So by the time a guy or a young lady is 15, they understand about tactics, they understand their game and so on. I always have used this example recently. A young lady, I think her name is Nash, on the 19th play from Australia.
I remember hearing you. I listened in on that conversation. I remember you talking about her interview after.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this was a 15-year-old girl. She just got into the team, just got into the team because someone pulled up in warm-ups. And at the middle of the match, the break, the guy asked her what was the plans, and she said, I had plans because I wasn't part of the preparation to play. I got pulled in a lab, but I went to my plans, because at 15 she already knows her game. How many on the 15-year-olds in the West Indies know their games that they could understand?
How many 25-year-olds?
Exactly. I'm glad you said it and not me, right?
Well, I can relate. I can relate to what you're saying, because I remember my experience, the last one, especially when I went to IPL, the Women's Challenge in 2020. The cricket conversations I was able to have with the young girls who are nowhere close to making the India side, not even close to making the India A side, or they did not even feature in that on the 19 team. But the cricket conversations I was able to have with those players, girls who understand the game, it is miles apart from what we were able to have here.
But guys, you know that can be taught.
Yeah.
Philip, I developed a online cricket coaching program, right? That would complement what you do in the field to develop the skills right? So I interviewed a lot of youngsters here in the United States, because I want to hear what the players need, not gonna assume what they need. And there were questions I asked these guys about, and it would intimate about their knowledge of their game, what they need to improve and so on. And I remember one day saying to one of them, I said, you know what? If I ask a youngster in the Caribbean the same question I asked you, they can't answer. And he go like, really, coach? I said, yeah. They were he couldn't believe it. Well, because I had spoken to my friend who coached on the 15s in Guyana. And I said, can I, on the 15, answer these questions? He said, no, Butch, no way. No, to me, he didn't even realize that was a deficit on his part. Because he's supposed to start to inculcate those things into those youngsters, to let a youngster know from early, part of being a good player, you have to know your game inside out. Because if you don't know your game inside out, you will not understand how to execute it in all different situations. You'll be wanting. And that's where, this is what happens at Shakera. You could probably chime in. So now a guy at the highest level, not knowing all his game, is going to be so dependent on the coach. If the coach don't tell he or she, they can't think on the feet in the game like that young lady I'm talking about from
I'm
Australia.
just about to tell you that shows just how difficult the coaches at the senior level in West Indies. How difficult the job is for them.
Exactly.
Because lots of the cricketers are shocked when they get to that level.
Yeah.
They know, they're no at a level that they
But there's a reason for that, Shakera. If you keep putting the emphasis on coaching at the international level, that's where the best coaches and the most sensible coaches will target put their energy. In other words, I'm not saying that a guy that a former cricketer at the highest level is necessarily going to be the best coach. Don't think that I'm going that route. I'm saying that if I know that if I'm a primary school coach, I'm going to work for $1,000 over a period of time. If I'm coaching in a secondary school, I am going to work for $2,000 during that period of time. If I'm going to coach the West Indies team, I'm going to work for $5,000 and probably in less time. If I have any sense, what am I going to try to prepare myself to do?
West Indies coach.
What am I going to be applying for? What position am I going to be applying for?
Yeah. And what you're asking there, I give you an example. I got a friend.
Well, so let me finish, right? Because I know that you're going to mute my mic before you finish. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're serious about your development, you got to give the primary school coach. I don't mean every primary school coach in every school because there's not practical. You have to give the people responsible for the program at that primary level the $5,000. The secondary, the $5,000, and the international, the $5,000, and you just assign the coaches based on what you think they are best at, based on their background, their training, and their interests and whatever. It may sound radical, but don't do it then. See when next we can qualify for a World Cup.
I'll tell you this: I got a friend in New Zealand, West Indian, played for Guyana, first class. And when I was in Sri Lanka with the US on the 19 team of the World Cup in 2006, in the lobby of the hotel, I met a couple from New Zealand. And, you know, we talking. And so I said, oh, my friend, I have a friend who I played cricket with in Guyana. He lives in New Zealand now and he coaches. And he said, what's his name? And I called his name Garfield Charles. He said, oh, we know Garfield very well. He lives down the street from us. And this husband was working for Cricket New Zealand, but not in the cricket. Just as you thought, he was working in more the marketing or whatever. And he said that Garfield has been reassigned to the under 15s because Cricket New Zealand has realized they need to put their best coaches to coach at the foundation level.
That is not rocket science. I saw someone this the other day.
So Garfield was seen as one of the better coaches in the area in New Zealand he lived, and they reassigned him to coach at the under 15s. And I am sure he did not get a demotion in pay from being at the under 19 to go down to coach. Okay. He was just simply reassigned.
So I will not be criticizing New Zealand for my position then.
Oh no, not at all. No, not at all.
But there again, New Zealand, they were in the top 4 in the World Cup, weren't they?
Exactly. They always punch above the weight.
And they're always
and we want to keep doing things the way we've always done them. Above our weight expect a different result.
I told someone this the other day, the best coaches have to be at the foundation level. That's not rocket science. That's simple.
Correct.
Guys, it's not rocket science that some people will tire of us even when we speak wisdom. So we will have another chit chat at some point in time.
Oh, and the young lady, Shakera is Maggie Clark is her name. The young Australian.
I couldn't remember the name, but I remember hearing that when I listening.
Yes, Maggie Clark. So I always use that young lady because it hit me. I'm listening to a 15-year-old talk with such eloquence that we got professional cricketers in the West Indies cannot hold that conversation.
It has to be taught, and it has to be taught from young. I recall coaching a junior table tennis team, Basil, many years ago, And before each game, I mean, there were other meetings, but before each match, when we knew who we were playing, we look at the opponents, and I would question them to find out what they know and what they think of the opponents and their style of play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they would respond, because they would have seen most of the players at some point before, even if only you know, in a previous game or whatever. And they would respond, and I would question them to find out what the areas and strengths of these players, and what do you think we need to do then to be able to be successful, and so on. And they would respond, because they're always going to have responses. The responses, the problem comes because we don't normally ask. So there's never anyone to validate their own beliefs. But here is what they heard was they were being asked. And I was listening to them. And then, of course, I would add my bit and have to fashion a plan then that we would go into. And that was a junior competition. I've done the same thing in primary school, okay? Where sometimes each player, or sometimes just the defenders, sometimes just the attackers together, the goalkeeper, and we talk about the game and your role in the game. We may or may not have seen the opponents before, so there may not be a specific plan for that opponent as such, based on the knowledge of that opponent, but you look at what you're supposed to do. Now, you might think that this is boring, or I never said anything boring. They enjoyed the discussion, and it helped them to think and to learn the game.
And what you're doing there also, they're learning that what I just
I said defenders, by the way. That was a football example. So
no,
yeah,
but
you might wonder what defenders I'm talking about.
Their game.
Yeah.
Because now they're participating in planning, and they're starting to understand how I fit in, my skills, and so on and so forth. Right? They're learning about their game and how to apply their game in a situation. So as they keep going up their ladder, they become more and more in tune with their game.
Yeah.
So so sometimes, Basil, maybe you can understand me now that when I speak, sometimes it is not that I'm just trying to be ridiculous. That may happen sometimes too, but I'm speaking from training and experience.
Right,
and from knowledge, from the problem is that sometimes we expect to see those things only in people who have played test cricket or things of that nature. But
in fairness though, Phil, like you see how we could have an organic conversation in this environment. It's hard to have that on a chat group.
It is. But Shakera is evidence to the fact that you can also play at a high level and still have and still be deep thinking. In other words, you're not so much on a high that you have forgotten what's practical. And clearly, this is a young lady who has performed at a high level, but still understands the basics of what is required to get to come along.
Of course, and I'll tell you too that I try to share my knowledge, because if there's one thing I think helped me to perform at the highest level, is my understanding of the game. And I try to share it out with the younger players. So sometimes I still take part in our second division competition. And I'm often put down as captain because of my experience and obviously leadership experience and everything. But what I have done is give it to a younger player. So we have a younger player, Trishan Holder. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she just played on making World Cup. Right. So I was sure, and I was saying, no, Trishan, I want you to captain. And I will let her make decisions. And then I will call her in when we have a little bit and say, all right, Trish, why you did this? Why do you have this person here? Or whatever. Let her tell me the reasoning behind it. And then just that you were saying, Philip, I would then explain to her, well, perhaps this, or don't you think this could happen? Or and that's the only way they're going to learn.
You're teaching people to think.
Yes.
Because that's important.
I'm 34. There's no future no for me. Yeah.
Philip, one of the things, and why I adamant about this, my dad, when he played, he always told me, he said he learned 99, maybe the percentages he exaggerate, but he always would say he learned 99% of his cricket in the dressing room, which meant discussing the game after the day's play.
I thought you were going to tell me for a moment there that he learned 90% of his cricket in the gym or at the Garrison running.
No. And then and he took that.
Couldn't resist.
When I was young, a teenager playing in the club, he was the captain. After each practice, we would sit down and discuss cricket. And the guys who played club cricket after he retired, because he played club cricket for about close to 10 years after he retired, the first division. And guys would tell you who played. After the game, he would tell them, go in my car, I got a bottle in the car there. and he would sit down with them for 2 hours after the day's play and discuss cricket, because he always said he learned 99% of his cricket in the dressing room. And that is something that is no longer part of our cricket environment. As soon as the match done, them guys gone home.
Gone.
Before you could say knife, every man jack dress up and they gone home. There's no sitting down and discussing the game. So we lose a lot of guys from being students of the game. And something when I coach cricket, I would tell the youngsters, when y'all watch the game, don't just watch for entertainment value.
Thank you.
Look
I
at
would
the
know
game
what to say.
and try to figure out why batter X did so in this situation, bowler X, etc. Not look at the fancy shots and next practice you want to do the scoop and so on and so forth.
I've always
Understand
said that.
context so you can learn. So now, because when you understand that, when you now go and play, you got another resource to fall back on of experience from you looking and seeing why the guy. And then listen to players when they talk about the game in post-match thing. There are a lot of insights one could pick up. That's like the young lady. I listened to her when I heard this. I was like, wow, that tells me about the Australian structure.
I continue to learn because I've never watched a game as a fan. I'm a cricketer. I watch the game to learn. I watch Dhoni and Stephen Fleming and those guys, and I see them do things, and I'm thinking, all right, this is what they want the bowler to do. This is the reason for you have to be watching the game to learn. You have to continuously be a student of the game. You're right. I keep telling the players that I associate with, you cannot watch like a fan, someone who will never play cricket for international cricket or has no plan to play international cricket. You are a cricketer. You have to watch to learn. Simple as that.
You call a name Dhoni. I always tell young players, y'all ever look at Dhoni when he's chasing? That's an education. As Dhoni all says, there's always time. And many times y'all panic, you get 3-4 dot balls and you pelt a swipe on out. But maybe if you looked at Dhoni and saw how he would carry it deep and find a way and he calculating in his mind how he's going to get this runs. That's a question, Shakera, I know that you commentating. You ask these guys, how do you come up with your plan in your head as the game is going along, working out? How am I going to get these runs? Against who I'm going to target, etc. These are the little things that separate you from becoming a good player at international level or not.
And that's one thing I was very pleased with at Super 50. We just mentioned Dhoni, but we saw Darren Bravo do it.
Yes.
To Barbados. He took the game deep. He had his plans. He knew he needed to stay there, and he waited, targeted the side with the wing, hit the ball with the wing. Simple things. And I was so happy to see Darren Bravo do it.
And unfortunately, he is one of the more experienced guys. We want to see that with the younger players. That's where we want to see it more. Because, I mean, some of the things I hear Bravo is not going to be in the team. I mean, I don't agree with that. Although he may not be around for the next World Cup. If that's true, because in my view, Bravo can serve a role in that development of that team for the next World Cup. He doesn't necessarily have to be on that team, but he could play a role in that process by playing, lending his experience, and then the time he may have to drop out, but he would have lent his experience that those guys would be ready to play in the World Cup by him being around. Because any coach would tell you, if you got players who experience that could set the stage for the guys, younger guys, your job is so much easier.
Yep. And also the simple fact that he just dominated. He performed well last year. He just dominated it. There has to be some merit to performing in your competition, your regional competition. If you don't pick a guy because he isn't going to play the next World Cup in 4 years, that's not fair. Because what you're telling guys that are 30 or 32, it doesn't make any sense to because you're not going to see that. If you're only picking youngsters who are going to be featured in that, that's not fair.
Right.
So added to what you said, there's merit to picking him. He just performed, and he performed last year as well.
There's a guy called Warner.
In the Caribbean, we have an aversion.
I think I know him.
There's a guy called Warner. I don't know if Basil knows him. But
yes.
I saw him up there yesterday. And they say he's 37. I didn't check, but you commentators never tell lies. So if they say he's 37,
Warner,
he's 37.
And Warner made over 500 runs.
I'm not even talking about the runs. I didn't even start with the runs yet.
I'm
not talking about the runs he saved yesterday.
Oh yes.
And not the fact that not the fact that he saved them either, but the
And
effort.
Phil, that is where the fitness comes in.
That is also where the effort comes in, and that is where, well, you see, the thing about fielding, right, is that fielding is something that, look, you talk about people being gifted, and it normally comes up in a cricket context with batting or bowling. It could
Correct.
come up with catching as well, it could. But I think you all would probably agree that if there's one aspect of cricket that is very, very, very trainable and which almost anybody can do if they work hard enough at it, is fielding.
Correct.
Agreed.
And but it takes, again, that's a mental thing. It's often said it's a mental thing. So again, it's a fitness, it's a fitness, Basil. It's the skill
But the
level from the constant
dedication.
practice. But
Yes,
what I
yes.
saw yesterday, what I saw from the World Cup final, okay, particularly, I'm not saying he didn't do it before, but of course everybody's attention was on the final. What I saw in the final, what stood out for me more than anything else, of all those things that come together to make an excellent fielder, was that mental part, that commitment.
Correct.
I cannot let this ball go past me.
And you see
The Australians did it in both the semifinals and the finals.
Yeah.
Because and this is interesting about Warner. Warner's an interesting person because today's the modern players, they spend X time in the gym with their fitness. Warner is one of those guys. Warner don't go to the gym. Warner does what he does is run. He just runs because he knows that when he gets on the field, whether it's running between the wicket or running in the outfield, he's gonna be running hard. So he runs hard. It's similar. Faf du Plessis the same way. And Faf, because Faf, you'd see Faf feeling long on. And somebody asked him, say, Faf, do you like that feeling long on? So he walking the length of the field every over. He said, I train because I know that's my role in the team. I'm going to be asked to do that. And I train for that, which would mean that he does a lot of running, putting that work in the legs like what
and some of that running, I think you would admit, Basil, can be done. I'm not saying don't run on the road or don't run anywhere else.
No, and I don't
advocate
that
running can be done on the field while you're doing your
exactly.
While you're doing your fielding drills. Yep. So you can have, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it down to the most basic level. You can have 10 people in the line hitting balls and pick up the ball and run and throw it back to the keeper, and you get a chance every 3 minutes or however long it takes to rotate. Or you can have 3 people hitting balls strategically to 3 parts of the field, and the same guy got to get all 3 back.
Exactly, because this is where the fitness comes in.
Exactly. That's a simple example.
Yeah.
And then what that also does, Basil, because if he's going in one direction and then he has to immediately turn and come back in the other direction, which is more enjoyable for a young cricketer, to do that or to do shuttle runs that have no real purpose. Well, I mean, they have a purpose in terms of getting you fit, but they have no purpose as an end in themselves.
We're telling that to the trainer. Some trainers will be very upset.
Yeah, so there's a purpose. So I'm going to just run in and touch the cone.
Yeah,
I'm running, picking up a ball, sending it in, but then there's another coach sending the ball back that they've got to do.
Get it so many things.
Just simple examples.
Shakera,
you can incorporate
these trainers that you've been around,
fitness elements in your training.
The trainers you've been around, they haven't studied or they have not continued to study, unfortunately. Because something they would know, if they had done so, they would know that play is something that you wanna have play as part of your training. Play.
And let me go further too, Basil. Let me go further too.
I've heard the coaches plead with trainers, all of this running, all this shuttles and things. Let us do more fielding. We can incorporate it in the fielding. And we've said that. Listen, I'm testament to that. If I'm just doing a sprint, a 40-meter sprint or a 20-meter sprint, I am one of the slowest. Watch me in the field and you will never know. You will never know I'm on the slowest.
Because you're running to get that ball.
Just to say this quickly, Phil, before I don't forget. Today, I had a client earlier this morning, and our workout was pretty much, for the most part, play. I had her doing drills, mobility, strength drills. That was fun, right? Before we catch yourself, our past. But we was having so much fun. It didn't even seem. And when she's done, she feeling parts of her body that had she was just doing regular squats or whatever, she wouldn't feel all of them areas.
Remember I said that I would need to get that guy to enjoy the table tennis to the extent that he doesn't even want to check his friend down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys get to see where they're coming from. And the thing about it, Shakera, Basil, Shakera, if you are at that training session, okay, that we're talking about, that intense training session where you're doing activities, cricket-related activities, and you find you can't keep up, if you've got any pride, what are you going to do?
Work harder, of course.
You're going to put in the extra work on your own.
Put in extra work. Where are
So you're
they?
going to embarrass yourself. So again, you are now motivated. You don't have to drop a guy to tell him. So you've got to understand people.
You know, Philip. Because I trained. I was a trainer for several U.S. national teams. All of it was based on cricket skills.
I would like to see that.
Everything on it was based on cricket skills. Everything.
If you don't mind, Basil, I would like to see that.
I'm gonna look and see if I can find it, and I'll get it to you.
Okay, Basil, could you say that again? Because I think I lost you for part of that. You said you were a trainer.
No, the guy at the time was the president of the Cricket Association. Asked me, put together a testing, a fitness testing for the teams, right? And I sat down and I just used cricket tasks in the strength to test whether it was strength, whether it was power, whether it was speed, whether all the various things on a cricket field that you would do. I use cricket skills to do so. I mean, an example, Shakera for power, throwing a cricket ball is an example of power in a cricket game.
Very practical one as well.
Exactly.
Exactly what you have to do.
And the cool thing about it, in the testing, you could then help the person to improve their technique so they can throw the ball harder and further.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Rather than this test where they tell people, do a long jump. Yeah, that's true. It's a test of power. But is that how you apply power in a cricket game?
Exactly.
Right.
Guys, lots of good stuff coming out. As I say, you can take a horse to the pond, but you can't make it.
Right.
You didn't say that in Ghana, Basil. You can't make it.
Oh yes, God. You take the horse to the horse to the water. You can't make it drink.
Can't make it drink. Say all the word.
True. Thanks very much, Shakera.
A universal saying for people that you can't make people do things they don't want to do.
True. Shakera, thanks a lot for joining us. Basil, thanks again. It was really great chatting with you guys, and let's agree to do it again sometime soon. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Join us again soon for another episode of Anything Cricket. Let's talk.